Breaking. King Charles just questioned Keir Starmer's new proposal in a way that has thrown Westminster into absolute panic. The monarchy just shattered 70 years of constitutional protocol. And what happened next could destroy the government within 48 hours. If you want to see how this crisis ends, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next 72 hours will determine Britain's future. Here's what sparked the constitutional chaos. 3 days ago, Starmer unveiled his controversial Democratic Modernisation Act at a packed press conference in Downing Street. His words were blunt and uncompromising. Britain's institutions need urgent reform for the 21st century, including how power flows between Parliament and other ancient structures. The target was clear, even if he never said the word: the monarchy. But King Charles wasn't staying silent. The king did something instead that no modern sovereign has dared since 1936. He acted. At 9:47 de la mañana yesterday morning, Royal Aiders delivered a private letter to Downing Street. His exact words were chilling, sources say. The letter reportedly contained a single devastating question directed at the Prime Minister's proposal. How does removing centuries of constitutional balance serve the British people when parliamentary sovereignty already grants you unlimited power? Within hours, the hammer fell. That letter, meant to stay confidential under royal protocol, was leaked to 3 major newspapers simultaneously. The Times printed excerpts. The Telegraph ran the full text. Even The Guardian, no friend to monarchy, published analysis calling it unprecedented. Someone wanted this fight public. Someone wanted blood. The response was swift and devastating. Downing Street went into complete lockdown mode. Starmer's Director of Communications, Simon Case, was seen sprinting through Westminster hallways, clutching folders marked urgent. Ministers cancelled television appearances. Scheduled parliamentary debates were suddenly postponed without explanation. According to senior Whitehall sources, Starmer himself locked his office door for 3 hours, refusing even his closest advisers. One minister who spoke on condition of anonymity described the atmosphere as absolutely poisonous, like watching a bomb tick down in real time. The question everyone was asking, had the king just declared constitutional war on his own prime minister? But wait, because there's another layer to this crisis that makes everything worse. The timing of Starmer's proposal wasn't accidental. Sources close to the Prime Minister reveal he deliberately scheduled the announcement knowing the king was preparing for his state visit to France next week. This was calculated, insiders say, to minimize royal pushback while Charles was focused on diplomatic duties abroad. One former Labour strategist called it political sabotage disguised as reform, suggesting Starmer wanted to present the king with a fait accompli, legislation already moving, through Parliament before Charles could respond. But the king saw through it immediately. Palace courtiers described Charles as livid when he realised the timeline, feeling his own Prime Minister was trying to ambush him. That's when he wrote the letter. That's when he decided protocol be damned. This fight needed to happen now, publicly, before Starmer could reshape Britain's constitutional foundation without proper scrutiny. The leaked letter contains even more explosive language than initially reported. According to the Telegraph's full publication, King Charles didn't just question the proposal, he systematically dismantled it. Line by line, the king allegedly pointed out legal inconsistencies, historical precedents that contradict Starmer's arguments, and constitutional experts who warned against exactly this type of reform. One particularly devastating passage reportedly reads, "When elected officials mistake temporary electoral mandates for permanent authority to rewrite centuries of carefully balanced governance, they risk the very democracy they claim to protect." These aren't the words of a ceremonial figurehead. These are the words of a constitutional scholar who spent his entire life preparing for exactly this moment. Senior barristers who've seen the letter call it the most legally sophisticated royal intervention in modern British history. Meanwhile, British veterans who served in the Falklands, Iraq and Afghanistan are facing absolute destitution. James Patterson, a 4-year-old former Royal Marine from Plymouth, was forced to choose between heating and eating last week. He served 22 years defending this nation. He lost 3 fingers in Helmand province. Now he survives on £890 monthly pension while politicians debate restructuring power they already have. The contrast is so brutal, so disgraceful, that even lifelong Labour supporters are questioning their loyalty. While veterans freeze in council flats, MPs enjoy subsidised meals in Parliament's 5 restaurants, expense accounts averaging £220,000 annually, and second homes paid by taxpayers. We're talking about people who've never worn a uniform, never risked anything, living like royalty while heroes suffer in silence. Patricia Reynolds, a 71-year-old widow from Manchester whose husband died serving in Northern Ireland, recorded a video that went viral overnight. Through tears, she said, "My husband gave his life for this country, and now they want to tear down everything he believed in." The Queen pinned his medal on him herself. That meant something. That connection between crown and country meant everything to him. That video has been viewed 4.3 million times. The comments section is filled with thousands of similar stories. Veterans and their families feeling abandoned by a government more interested in constitutional experiments than supporting those who actually sacrificed for Britain. The emotional weight of these testimonies is crushing. This isn't abstract political debate anymore. This is about fundamental British identity, about what this nation stands for, about whether we honour our past or erase it in pursuit of progressive fantasy. Then, something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles broke protocol again. At Wednesday's Commonwealth reception at Buckingham Palace, he delivered what palace insiders are calling the most politically charged speech of his reign. Standing before diplomats from 56 nations, his voice steady but unmistakably pointed, the king spoke about constitutional stability. Institutions that have preserved peace and prosperity for centuries, Charles declared with barely concealed emotion, should not be dismantled by those who mistake revolution for reform. The room went silent. Ambassadors exchanged nervous glances. Everyone understood. This wasn't diplomatic pleasantry. This was a warning shot fired directly at Downing Street. Palace insiders reveal the king personally rewrote that speech 3 times, removing careful diplomatic language his advisors recommended, making it sharper, more direct, more dangerous. One senior courtier described Charles as absolutely resolved, saying he believes Starmer's proposal threatens the very foundation of British democracy. The optics are absolutely devastating for the Prime Minister. Here's the King of England, the living embodiment of British continuity, openly questioning the government's flagship legislation. Here's a monarch who spent 70 years waiting to reign, now risking everything to defend constitutional order. And here's Keir Starmer, looking increasingly isolated, increasingly reckless, increasingly like a man who miscalculated catastrophically. Constitutional experts are stunned. Professor Margaret Thornton of Cambridge University called it extraordinary, saying no monarch since Queen Victoria has so directly challenged government policy. But Charles isn't technically interfering in politics, she explained. He's defending the constitutional framework itself, which is precisely his duty under his coronation oath. But here's where it gets really interesting. The King's speech wasn't just aimed at Starmer. Hidden in the carefully chosen words was a message to the British public, a rallying cry disguised as diplomatic protocol. Royal historians note that Charles specifically referenced the Civil War period, the execution of Charles I, and the chaos that followed when Parliament tried to govern without constitutional balance. He talked about how Britain learned painful lessons about the dangers of unchecked power, lessons written in blood and suffering. Every historian in that room caught the implication immediately. Starmer isn't just proposing reform, he's repeating the mistakes of 1649. One American diplomat was overheard telling colleagues that he'd never witnessed anything like it, a modern king essentially calling his prime minister a would-be Cromwell. The diplomatic community is buzzing with speculation about what comes next. If the king is willing to go this far publicly, what is he planning privately? The domino effect has been catastrophic. Financial markets responded within hours. The pound dropped 1.3% against the dollar. Government bonds took their biggest single-day hit since the Liz Truss disaster. Investors are spooked by constitutional uncertainty. Major institutions are quietly moving assets offshore. Bloomberg reported that £4.7 billion was withdrawn from UK markets in 36 hours. The economic damage is real, immediate, and entirely self-inflicted. Political fractures are widening by the hour. 23 Labour backbenchers have now signed a private letter demanding Starmer withdraw the proposal. The letter, obtained by Sky News, warns of catastrophic electoral damage if this fight continues. More devastating, 5 shadow cabinet members privately told whips they cannot defend this legislation publicly. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, gave a television interview yesterday where she was asked about the King's concerns 4 separate times. 4 times she changed the subject. Her refusal to defend her own Prime Minister spoke volumes. International reactions have been brutal. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney praised constitutional monarchy as essential democratic bedrock, a direct rebuke to Starmer. Australian opposition leaders called the British government's approach dangerous and short-sighted. Even President Biden's press secretary, when asked about UK constitutional matters, diplomatically noted that American founders respected institutional stability. Another subtle criticism: Britain's reputation as a model of political stability is being shredded in real time. Social media exploded into absolute warfare. Hashtag Defend the King trended globally for 18 consecutive hours. Hashtag Starmer resign hit 2.1 million tweets. Facebook groups supporting the monarchy gained 340,000 members in 2 days. TikTok videos defending Charles reached combined views over 89 million. The public has chosen sides decisively, and Starmer is on the losing end. Inside Downing Street, the atmosphere is described as complete panic by multiple sources. Ministers are allegedly shouting at each other behind closed doors. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner was overheard telling a colleague that Starmer has lost the plot completely, according to a Westminster journalist with palace connections. Cabinet Secretary Simon Case has reportedly drafted 3 separate crisis management plans, each worse than the last. WhatsApp groups with names like Save Labour and Post-Starmer Planning are buzzing with frantic messages. The question isn't if they'll move against him anymore, it's when. Starmer himself looked visibly shaken at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. Normally sharp and composed, he fumbled basic responses. When Conservative leader Rishi Sunak asked if the Prime Minister still had confidence in his own legislation, Starmer's answer rambled for 90 seconds without answering the question. MPs on his own benches looked mortified. One Labour veteran was seen literally shaking his head in disbelief. Emergency meetings are happening around the clock now. Thursday night, senior ministers gathered at an undisclosed location in Westminster for what attendees described as a brutal truth session. Transport Secretary Louise High reportedly told Starmer directly that he's destroyed Labour's credibility in 6 days. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson warned that teachers' unions, traditionally Labour's strongest allies, are furious about the constitutional chaos distracting from education funding. Even Starmer's longtime ally David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, allegedly said the international damage is irreparable, that foreign leaders are questioning whether Britain is still a reliable partner. The meeting ended past midnight with no resolution, no plan, and Starmer refusing to consider withdrawal. One minister leaving. The building told a journalist, "He's going down with the ship and taking us all with him." But here's the layer that could end Starmer's career completely. Leaked documents from inside Labour headquarters show the party's own internal polling is catastrophic. If these documents are real, and if they show what 3 separate sources claim, then Labour is heading for its worst electoral performance since 1983. The polling allegedly shows Labour support collapsing to 23%, a 19-point drop in just 6 days. Think about what that means. A government elected with a massive majority less than 2 years ago is now facing complete electoral annihilation. The swing seats that gave Starmer power, places like Bury, Swindon, and Peterborough, have turned against him by margins of 30 points or more. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating. A prime minister who picked a fight with the king and lost the country in the process. History won't be kind. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak is playing this crisis like a strategic genius. While Starmer flails and Labour implodes, Sunak stands in Parliament speaking calmly about respecting constitutional traditions and defending institutions that unite us. No attacks, no mockery, no drama, just quiet statesmanship. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Conservatives, written off as finished just months ago, are suddenly resurgent. Their polling has climbed from 26% to 34% in 5 days. For the first time since the disastrous Truss premiership, they lead nationally. Sunak isn't just surviving Labour's meltdown, he's positioning himself as the defender of British stability while Starmer burns down his own government. The polls tell the story. Conservatives 34%, Labour 23%, Liberal Democrats 14%, Reform UK 12%. A complete inversion of the political landscape. For the first time in modern history, a sitting Prime Minister with a massive majority is trailing the opposition by double digits 6 months into his term. The next 72 hours are absolutely critical. Parliament reconvenes Monday for what insiders are calling the most explosive session in decades. Starmer must either defend his proposal and escalate the constitutional crisis, or withdraw it completely and admit catastrophic defeat. Neither option saves his premiership. Backbench rebellions are being organised openly now. Leadership challenges are being discussed in Westminster tea rooms. Angela Rayner is quietly meeting potential supporters, one-on-one, sources confirm. The question is no longer whether Starmer survives. It's how many days he has left before his own party removes him. Britain is watching a prime minister self-destruct in real time. This crisis will be studied for decades as a textbook example of political miscalculation, of a leader who forgot that some institutions are bigger than any one person's agenda. At its epicenter stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly desperate, increasingly isolated, increasingly finished. And standing across from him, silent but immovable, is King Charles III, the monarch who learned patience through 70 years of waiting and is now teaching Starmer a devastating lesson. In Britain, the crown doesn't fight political battles. It simply waits for politicians to destroy themselves. So here's the question that matters. Does Starmer withdraw this proposal and admit total defeat, or does he double down and accelerate his own political execution? Did the king just end a prime minister's career with a single letter, or will Starmer somehow find a way to survive what looks like impossible odds? What do you think happens next? Does Starmer resign before his party forces him out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and if this constitutional crisis shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in Westminster right now. The mainstream media won't tell you how close this government is to collapse, but we will. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because tomorrow we're revealing the leaked documents that show just how bad Labour's internal polling really is. This story is far from over. The next 48 hours could change Britain forever.